Adolf Hitler. He engineered the Holocaust, an industrialized system of murder that annihilated 6 million Jews, millions of Polish civilians, disabled people, Roma families, political prisoners, and anyone he considered unfit to exist. Hitler's crimes began long before gas chambers. After rising from a failed artist to a political agitator in the 1920s, he discovered a talent for stirring fear and hatred. When he became chancellor in 1933, Germany did not know it had just handed absolute power to a man who believed extermination was a solution, not a crime. Hitler dismantled democracy within months. Books were burned. Newspapers were silenced. Opponents vanished into concentration camps. Jewish citizens were stripped of rights, then property, then humanity itself. By 1939, Europe plunged into war as Nazi forces swept across nations. Behind the front lines, Einsatzgruppen death squads followed, executing civilians in forests and fields. But Hitler wanted more. He wanted efficiency. Factories of death were built in Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, and other camps, where trains delivered thousands each day, and chimneys released their ashes by nightfall. Children were torn from mothers. Families were separated on arrival. People were worked to death, shot, starved, experimented on, or gassed. As the war turned against him, Hitler isolated himself in a bunker beneath Berlin. His empire collapsed above him. On April 30, 1945, he placed a pistol to his head and ended his life, a coward's death for a man who caused a world of suffering. Joseph Stalin. He starved millions of Ukrainians to death during the Holodomor, a man-made famine created through forced grain seizures that turned fertile farmland into a graveyard of silence. Stalin's rise was carved through paranoia and blood. He seized power after Lenin's death, eliminating rivals through purges, show trials, and secret police terror. Anyone who questioned him suffered. The Holodomor remains one of his darkest crimes. Stalin demanded impossible grain quotas, leaving villagers with nothing. Soldiers searched homes, confiscating food down to the last seed. Families starved. Entire villages died. Reports describe people collapsing in fields, too weak to move. Children begging for bread that would never come. But Stalin's brutality did not end with famine. The Great Purge, from 1936 to 1938, turned fear into a national culture. Millions were arrested, tortured into confessing imaginary crimes, and executed or sent to gulags, frozen labor camps where prisoners worked until their bodies gave out. When Stalin died of a stroke in 1953, his closest advisors found him on the floor of his room, gasping for help, yet none dared enter, afraid of punishment if he survived. After his death, revelations of his crimes shocked the world, but the scars he left on the Soviet Union would last generations. Vlad the Impaler. He executed thousands by impalement. Driving wooden stakes through bodies and leaving them upright in the ground until victims died slowly over hours or even days. Vlad III of Wallachia, known as Vlad Tepes, grew up surrounded by violence. Taken hostage as a boy by the Ottoman Empire, he learned cruelty from his captors. When he returned to rule, he unleashed brutality with a precision that terrified Europe. His signature punishment, impalement, was designed not just to kill but to horrify. Victims were stripped, stakes sharpened, and bodies forced onto them through the lower body, sometimes avoiding vital organs so the person remained alive longer. Forests of impaled bodies greeted invading armies, the stench of death drifting for miles. Yet Vlad saw himself as a defender of Christian Europe, fighting Ottomans and crushing corruption. But his methods were monstrous. Burning villages, boiling people alive, mutilations, and mass executions. No crime was too small for his wrath. He died in battle around 1476. His head was cut off and sent to the Ottoman Sultan, displayed on a spike, an ironic end for a man who perfected the art of impalement. Idi Amin. He massacred entire ethnic groups, fed victims to crocodiles, and ruled Uganda through 8 years of terror that left up to 500,000 people dead. Idi Amin began as a soldier, violent, impulsive, feared by his own comrades. When he seized Uganda's presidency in 1971, he styled himself a jovial, charismatic leader. But beneath the humor was a man consumed by brutality. Political opponents disappeared. Bodies floated in the Nile, mutilated beyond recognition. Amin's death squads targeted the Lango and Akoli people, killing thousands. Businesses were seized from Asian families, who were expelled in one of the largest mass deportations of the century. Amin lived extravagantly, surrounding himself with soldiers and wives while his country bled. He tortured ministers personally, beat dissidents, and ordered executions casually, as if human life meant nothing. His rule collapsed after he invaded Tanzania in 1978. Forced into exile, he lived comfortably in Saudi Arabia until 2003, dying peacefully in a hospital bed, receiving a calm end he never granted his victims. Pol Pot. He wiped out nearly 2 million Cambodians, 1/4 of the entire population, through starvation, forced labor, torture, and execution in his quest for a pure, agrarian society. Pol Pot believed cities were corrupt. Modernity was evil. Knowledge was dangerous. So he emptied Cambodia's cities in 1975, forcing millions into the countryside at gunpoint. Hospitals were evacuated. Mothers carried babies for miles. Anyone who slowed down was shot. The Khmer Rouge banned religion, money, schools, families, everything that made life meaningful. People worked impossibly long hours with barely any food. Those who resisted were executed. Those with an education were murdered. Wearing glasses could be a death sentence. S21, Tul Sleng, became the most feared place in Cambodia. Prisoners were tortured until they confessed to imagined crimes, then executed and buried in mass graves. By the time Pol Pot's regime fell in 1979, Cambodia was a nation of orphans and ghosts. Pol Pot himself escaped justice, dying in 1998 in a jungle hut, never paying for the river of blood he caused. King Leopold II of Belgium. He turned the Congo into a private labor camp, killing an estimated 10 million people through forced rubber collection, starvation, mutilation, and terror. Leopold II never visited the horror he created, yet his cruelty ranks among the worst in history. Through deceit and diplomacy, he convinced European nations that he would civilize the Congo. Instead, he built a system of forced labor and punishment. Villages that failed to meet rubber quotas faced torture or death. Soldiers sliced off their hands to prove bullets weren't wasted. Women were held hostage to force men into the forest. Entire tribes were wiped out. Missionaries eventually exposed the atrocities, sparking global outrage. Belgium seized the colony from Leopold in 1908, but the damage was permanent. Leopold died the next year, wealthy and unapologetic, his victims suffering hidden behind destroyed records. Mao Zedong. His policies, including the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, caused the deaths of more than 45 million Chinese citizens, making him possibly the deadliest leader in human history. Mao envisioned an ideal communist society, but his experiments cost millions their lives. The Great Leap Forward forced peasants into giant communes, where unrealistic grain quotas led to catastrophic famine. Reports from the era described families dying one by one, with entire villages collapsing from starvation. Crops rotted. Fields produced nothing. And all the while, Mao refused to change course. Then came the Cultural Revolution. Schools closed. Youth militias terrorized cities. Intellectuals were beaten, humiliated, or killed. Temples, books, and artifacts were destroyed in a frenzy of ideological violence. When Mao died in 1976, China was shattered, culturally, economically, emotionally. Only after his death did the scale of his destruction become clear. Saddam Hussein. He ordered chemical attacks on Kurdish civilians, executed political rivals, invaded neighboring nations, and ruled Iraq with a brutality that turned fear into a national language. Saddam rose from a violent childhood to political power by assassinating rivals and manipulating alliances. As president, his first act was a mass purge, reading names aloud of traitors, who were dragged outside and executed immediately. He terrorized Iraq for decades. Halabja remains his darkest chapter. In 1988, he ordered poison gas dropped on the Kurdish city. Thousands died instantly. Survivors suffered burns, blindness, and lifelong illness. Opponents were tortured in prisons. Families were executed. Entire villages were erased. After the US invasion in 2003, Saddam was captured hiding underground. Tried for crimes against humanity, he was hanged in 2006, still defiant but finally powerless. Mengistu Haile Mariam. He launched Ethiopia's Red Terror, executing tens of thousands, imprisoning countless more, and forcing families to pay for the bullets that killed their loved ones. Mengistu seized power in 1977, claiming to defend Ethiopia from enemies. Instead, he unleashed terror. Militias patrolled the streets, dragging teenagers from homes. Bodies were left in the open as warnings. Mengistu himself demonstrated execution methods, smashing bottles filled with red liquid to symbolize blood. His policies worsened famines, displaced millions, and brought the nation to collapse. When rebel forces advanced, he fled to Zimbabwe, where he still lives in protected exile. Muammar Gaddafi. He ordered mass executions, publicly hanged students, tortured dissidents, sponsored international terrorism, and ruled Libya with violent unpredictability for more than 4 decades. Gaddafi seized Libya in 1969, overthrowing the monarchy. At first he promised reform, but soon he created a cult of personality that demanded absolute loyalty. Opponents were hunted down worldwide. Students who criticized him were hanged on television. Secret police tortured prisoners in underground cells. Entire towns that resisted his rule were punished with siege tactics, starvation, and mass arrests. Gaddafi funneled money to terrorist groups, linked to bombings such as the Lockerbie attack. Inside Libya, he imposed a system of fear. His Green Book became mandatory reading, and anyone who rejected his ideology faced brutal consequences. During the Arab Spring of 2011, Gaddafi responded to protests with overwhelming force, shelling civilians, shooting demonstrators, and attacking cities. Rebels eventually captured him as he tried to flee Sirte. He was beaten, shot, and killed by the crowd, a violent end to a violent life. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating dark history stories.